you'll be able to see coming up on the left is a big clock tower. That is the Rathaus, or the Town Hall of Charlottenburg. So I mentioned already this district was called Charlottenburg. Every district in Berlin has its own town hall, and this building looks very different than anything else around it. And that is because at least part of it is the original. A good rule of thumb for Berlin is when the bombs fell, they destroyed the roofs and the insides, but oftentimes the exterior walls were still standing. So whenever possible, they would repair the facade, but completely redo the inside. That's what happened here. So sometimes in Berlin you see building that looks old from the outside, but is new from the inside. The rest of the neighborhood, though, is not so attractive. These buildings around us were all constructed after the war in the 1950s and 60s in a big hurry. There were still people living in Berlin, but so much had been damaged that there were very few apartments left. So the city tried to build as fast as they could housing, and that meant there wasn't much attention paid to the aesthetics of the buildings. So this neighborhood isn't very pretty, but it definitely is popular. There are a lot of families, especially, that live out here on the west side of the city. The west side of the city, by the way, is dominated by a very large park called the Tiergarten, or the Animal Garden. This was the hunting grounds of the royal family, the Hohenzollerns. We will drive through it later. But in the 1790s, they donated that land to the city, became its biggest public park. It still is that now. 50 years after that, the first zoo in Germany was constructed, and 40 years after that, in the 1880s, the zoo train station was built, which was the heart of former West Berlin, where Norbert is taking us in a few minutes. So here to our left is the Town Hall of Charlottenburg. And now I wanted to point out, if you look just ahead, you hopefully can be able to see a rather tall building. That is the Technical University. We're going to drive by it in a moment. There are 3 big universities in Berlin. There's also the Humboldt University, we'll see later, and the Free University, which is in the deep west, pretty far from here. I studied there when I was a student here. And it's called the Free University not because it's free, although it is practically free. It only costs about 400 euros per semester to go to school here. And that includes a subway ticket. And if you were to buy just a subway ticket by itself, it would almost be 400 euro. So it is practically free to go to school here. But it's called that because it was founded in the 1950s as a university free from the Nazi way of thinking, free from the Soviet way of thinking, a place where people could just learn. I do have one more thing to tell you, but before I do, you might notice over here to our left is a Scientology center. Germany is a free country. There's freedom of religion. The Berliners aren't really big fans of Scientology, but they are allowed to worship here. And the building was constructed really for Tom Cruise when he was here in town filming his movie Valkyrie, you might have heard of, or maybe even seen, about an assassination attempt on Hitler's life. And if you follow Hollywood news at all, you know that he is a Scientologist, so that was built really for him when he was here. Now, we are about to drive by, on our right, the Technical University, and I wanted to add that the Berliners usually call the universities by their nicknames or their acronyms. So the Technical University to our right is called the TU, the Humboldt University we'll see later is the HU, and the Free University is the FU, which is not so polite to say. It is not quite as vulgar in German as it is in English, but still not something that you should probably say. And the president of the university wrote a memo and sent it to the faculty and staff asking everyone to refer to the university by its full name, never by its acronym. And I know this because a friend of mine works there. But you still hear the students referring to it as the FU from time to time. We're not going to head down there, though. It's a little too far away, but we will see the HU later. Now, from here, we are making our way towards the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, or the Kaiser Wilhelm Gedenkniskirche. And I did want to get out. I want to take you into the church. It's free. You can take photos, and it's worth a few minutes of our time. And it is now, you're going to see behind the big skyscraper just up ahead, that is the bombed out church. By the way, this skyscraper is the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, brand new. They just finished it last year. But let me tell you about the church. So the church was built in the 1890s in honor of the Kaiser, the emperor, who had died a few years before. It was and still is a Protestant church, and it was bombed during World War II in November of 1943 by Royal Air Force bombers, and the Berliners made the decision to never repair it. So it stands as a reminder of the futility or the uselessness of war. There was a new addition built to it in the 1960s, made up of a bell tower on one side and a hall in the front, which we will visit in a few minutes. The old part has been turned into a small museum and has some photos of what the city used to look like compared to what it looks like now. And the new part is kind of gray and even a little ugly from the outside, but inside it's filled with beautiful blue stained glass. It's just gorgeous, very unique in Europe. So we've got the zoo train station we're about to go under. Norbert is going to turn right, but if you folks look to your left, you'll see part of the park and also one of the entrances to the zoo. And it just occurred to me, I forgot to ask about the mic. Is it still tough to hear in the back? It's good now?
Yes.
Okay, please keep me posted. If it is not good, please speak up. I definitely want to make sure you can hear me. I'll ask Norbert to turn the volume up. So there is the park and the zoo to our left. The church is straight ahead. Norbert's going to turn around and we're going to hop out and see that church. Now, I will be with you if you have any questions, but I wanted to say when you go in, make sure to look down. The tiles are very pretty, and please look up. The mosaic on the ceiling is just gorgeous. And then once you're finished in the old part, you can walk into the new part and see that blue stained glass. Before we get there though, I did want to point out the yellow pipes coming up to the left. Do you see those pipes there?
Yeah.
They can be found throughout the city, and those pipes are actually used to transport beer. No, I'm just kidding. They're not for beer. Making sure you're awake. The city of Berlin was built on a swamp. And in fact, the word Berlin is an old Slavic expression that means swamps. Whenever you dig to build anything here, you hit water right away. So those pipes are there to pump the water out of the ground so you can build the foundation safely. When the pipes aren't needed anymore, they're portable. They're moved to the next construction site. So I guess they figured if they were only going to be there for a few months at a time, it wouldn't make sense to bury them. And they're painted different colors based on the company that owns them. So there are some yellow pipes we just saw. We will also see pink, purple, blue, and silver pipes later. So there are a lot of them in the city. Norbert in a moment is going to turn left onto what is probably the most famous street in former West Berlin, called the Kurfürstendamm, which the locals like to call the Kuhdamm. This is the main shopping street when the city was divided. Still a very fun, lively area, one of the most crowded in the city. But if we were to drive straight for about 3 blocks, we would be at my apartment. We're not going to my apartment. I don't think we'd fit. My apartment is pretty small, but I like to mention it because people are often curious about the cost of living in Berlin. So first let me describe my apartment briefly, and then I'll tell you how much I pay in rent. So my apartment is in a little quiet residential neighborhood. It's well connected to the subway. It's not considered trendy, but it is safe, and I really like it. My apartment is small. It's about 38 square meters, which is just under 400 square feet. It's a little studio, just enough for me and my dog. And I pay in rent with utilities about 400 euros a month. That's just over $500 US. So the cost of living here is actually quite low, and there's a reason for that, but I'm going to tell you after we see the church, because now, here we are, the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church right in front of us. The bottom half of the old part is covered with a white, sort of odd scaffolding. It doesn't look like scaffolding, but it is. They are cleaning the building. They're not repairing it, they're just cleaning it. And it's annoying that it's covered at all, but let me tell you, we're pretty lucky, because the last 2 summers, it was covered completely. You couldn't see any part of the building. And it was very difficult talking about a church when no one could see it. So I'm happy we can see the top from here. Now, Norbert is going to stay in this location. I would ask